A lot of times, the audience doesn't realize this, a lot of times what you see on camera is way closer in person.
Oh yeah.
And people ask me all the time, like, what was it like filming it? I was like, it was more exciting than watching it. Because things are bigger, closer, and happen faster than they do on the lens. So in order to make things look really dynamic on camera, you usually gotta really push it.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we hear an aviation-focused combat story with three pioneers in the civilian and military aviation and filmmaking community who are the driving forces behind the aerial scenes from Top Gun Maverick. Many will recall our interview with Scott Intake Kartvedt as the accountant turned naval aviator who went on to fly A-18s, command an F-35 squadron, fly with the Blue Angels, and now flies the number 5 airplane in the civilian aerobatic formation flight Patriots Jet Team. Scott's fantastic new book, Full Throttle, From the Blue Angels to Hollywood Stunt Pilot, chronicles his experiences in and outside the cockpit. Our second guest is the owner of the Patriots Jet Team, Randy Howell. Flies the number 6 aircraft and taught Tom Cruise to fly the L-39 jet for Maverick. To give you an idea of how long Randy has been flying, he has 7,000 more flight hours than expert aviator Sully Sullenberger, who famously landed his commercial airliner in the Hudson River after an in-flight emergency. Randy and Intake made up a pair of stunt pilots for Maverick, including the intense flying in the last 8 minutes of the movie, for which they were awarded the Screen Actors Guild Award for action. Our third guest is Kevin K2 LaRosa, who grew up in Hollywood as an aviation stuntman, pilot, and aerial coordinator. You've seen him in the air in over 100 films and TV shows, including Iron Man, Avengers, Transformers, Devotion, Top Gun Maverick, and many, many more. He's the VP of aerial production for Helinet Aviation, and on Top Gun Maverick, he served as the aerial coordinator, directing the scenes that we came to love on the big screen. This is a rare glimpse into flying with three experts and pioneers in the field. We dig into so much in this episode about flying on the edge, and I hope you enjoy these stories of pushing the limits of aerial cinematography with both aircraft and cameras, stories of teaching Tom Cruise to fly jets, and the close calls and near misses that inevitably come with aviation as much as I did. So we're here in the Patriot Jet Team hangar with some talented aviators, and I do not include myself in that group, having flown just for a few years with the Army, but obviously here with some people who have incredible experience both in the military, Hollywood, and both. And I was hoping we could start out with a really tough question. Kevin, we're gonna go to you first, which is, why is it so much harder to fly a helicopter than a jet?
Well, it's because I'm confused all the time. I don't know. I always I got a foot in both camps. You know, I know you're a rotary wing guy. I always had a dream to fly both, and they're just different. You don't get out of a Jeep and get in a Honda and drive it differently. It's a car, and so the same principles of flight. Your brain doesn't think about it. You get in and you do what the aircraft needs you to do. But it is fun because when I fly aircraft, we make fun of helicopter pilots.
Yeah.
And when I'm in helicopters, we absolutely make fun of jet pilots.
There you go. Obviously, just joking as we kick off with that one, with some incredible aviators here who have flown everything. But I wanted to just share who we have here, right? So for the people who have listened to Combat Story, Intake, they've heard our discussion. A couple 100,000 people thought it was worth a couple hours of time to listen to us. So they know about you, but just for some more background, FA-18s, squadron commander with 35s, Blue Angels, and a storied accountant to Top Gun because you saw one of these movies back in the day. But beyond that, I'd love to hear you speak to the call sign, the flight hours, just before we get started here.
Sure, I get asked about the call sign a bunch. Why Intake?
Yep.
And if I turn to the profile, big nose, I take in more than my fair share of air. And unlike some of the other services that might have a Wolverine or Badger, I got stuck with Intake, but happy to have it. And you know, in addition to all of the things that I have been able to do in the military, I'm exceptionally proud of the work that I've been able to do with Randy and Kevin in Hollywood. It's been dynamic. It's been an incredible couple of years, and I'm just proud to be part of it.
And I think it's just starting, honestly, from the way you talk about it. And actually, I asked my family, hey, why do you think his call sign's Intake? And my son was saying he probably tears it up at a buffet line.
Yeah.
Something had to happen. That guy must inhale a lot of food.
So when I give speeches, I used to ask, why do you think intake? And somebody would say, you eat a lot. And that's when I realized, one, I shouldn't ask that question, and two, it's time to get back to the gym, start working out.
And then total hours that we have for you, Intake, in aircraft.
In aircraft, 7,500 at this point.
All right. Again, that's why I don't count myself in this crew.
Do I have to go after Randy?
You do, yeah. So we're going to go next to Randy. Last time I checked, and you can't believe everything you read online, but I saw something around 16,000 hours. But please course correct us, Randy. I'd love to hear more about your background too.
That was probably printed about 16 years ago. So I've got about 27,000 hours of flying time, but I have to preface that by saying that 27,000 hours sounds like a lot, but I was a 747 captain and I spent half that time in the bunk sleeping, but I still logged it. So a lot of time in the bunk. I started out at United Airlines, had a paper route and all civilian leading up to United. At United, I was hired as a 737 co-pilot. I retired, took early retirement to do this full time, took early retirement from United 28 years later and retired as a 747 international captain. I enjoyed my time there, but I like to fly the faster, pointier airplanes, and I love air show formation flying. That's why I founded the Patriots Jet Team. This is our 21st season.
Wow.
So 21 years flying the Patriots. Prior to that, I flew about 7 years in the MiG-17 and a two-ship formation team that I had formed, flying 2 MiG-17s on the air show circuit. I was lucky enough to work with Kevin and his dad in the past, and then Kevin and I got together and started out on this venture, and then we found Intake was a perfect fit.
Awesome. And perfect segue, and if it makes you feel any better, Kevin, I'll go after you with flight hours so you feel better.
All right.
But over to you, and obviously great segue with the family history of aviation on your side of the family.
Yeah, 3rd generation aviator, 2nd generation aerial coordinator and stunt pilot. So kind of born into it.
Yep.
And I was foaming at the mouth to get behind the controls of an aircraft. Felt like my dad was holding me back to make sure I did all the other important things in life, like get good grades. And these days I'm sitting at 6,500 hours total time. It's kind of mixed between helicopters and jets and airplanes, which is kind of where I wanted to be. And my full-time job is being an aerial coordinator and a motion picture pilot.
That's cool. Okay. Yeah, I'm at 1,000, so just to set the baseline here.
1,000 hardcore hours.
Yeah, that's Apache time. That's Apache time.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. The little pat on the back there. You mentioned Arial Coordinator. That's one of the things that really struck me as I was preparing for this was, I don't know Hollywood the way you all do, certainly yourself, Kevin. Arial Coordinator sounds like a simple term, but I have to imagine when we talk about something like Top Gun Maverick, there's so much that goes into that role. So if you could share for us, what does an aerial coordinator do on a set? And then take us into Top Gun Maverick, which is kind of what brings you all together, I think.
Sure. I hear aerial coordinator used a little loosely these days throughout the industry, but really what it means to me and how I was brought up, because my dad's an aerial coordinator, mostly retired. An aerial coordinator to me is an individual who holds the utmost responsibility on set for anything aviation related in the movie. Foremost, the livelihood and the safety of our team and individuals that are working in and around the aviation assets. The compliance regulatory-wise, doesn't matter what country we're working in, we have to comply with those regulations and not break rules. Watching after production as far as the insurance claims, little things that could turn into bigger things. And then the more fun part, this creative aspect, and a really good aerial coordinator knows how to turn storyboards into reality at its core.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, one of the best traits I think of an aerial coordinator is recognizing that you don't know how to do that and bringing in the team, right? Because that's really what makes any successful organization, military, civilian, you name it, Patriot Jet Team, You bring in people that are better and smarter than you. You surround yourself with those people, and all of a sudden you got yourself a pretty hardcore setup.
You mentioned that it's used loosely. You've been on 100+ sets, right, for various movies, and people, as they look at your resume, it's incredible with Avengers and Iron Man, and I mean, the stuff that I love, the Jack Ryans and Zero Dark 30, and you've done work on all those. As we lead into Top Gun Maverick, how much different is it to be an aerial coordinator on something like that film compared to some of these others?
It's a good question. Versus a film where an aerial's following or tracking a car, a couple shots, Top Gun Maverick was the pinnacle.
It has to be.
Of aviation, motion picture aviation, pinnacle. And it likely may never be exceeded in our lifetime or ever. It's a movie obviously about aviation, and I was on the movie for over a year, from our testing phase to the completion stage. That is a mammoth of a film and an incredible adventure.
Can you talk through, as the aerial coordinator for that, what does that look like, and when do you all start to come together as a team there?
You get a call. You hang up, you wake up all your neighbors because you're excited, but you play it really cool on the call. I'll check my schedule.
Where does that call come from, just for the layman?
I got called by Tommy Harper, who's producer of the movie.
Okay.
And I was hoping, right? Going to bed every night, dreaming of getting this job, not knowing if I would. And I'm a young aerial coordinator, and looking back at my competition and colleagues, and I got it. So that's the first step, is getting there. And then it's, what do we have to do? And you start getting fed information about this incredible movie, and everything's gonna be real, all real flying, multiple camera assets, and then you start putting together the team and the equipment you're gonna need to do it. And you build the budgets, and you build the calendars with them, and you make all the creative things fit inside normal aviation. And that's a weird thing. The movie industry it's an interesting business. And fitting aviation into the movie business is quite an interesting thing, because these are real. They act on real physical laws, air laws, and movies make believe, if you will, right? So Top Gun's a little different. Top Gun's highly realistic in how we did that whole thing. But typically it takes a little figuring out how to do things safely, because we blow aircraft up, we shoot missiles, we do weird things, we fly under bridges, land on trains, stuff you usually wouldn't do.
About 20 years ago, I was working with Kevin's dad on an AT&T commercial. My very first exposure to aerial filming, really. And his dad and I walked in, I was standing next to him, and the producer said, okay, what I want you to do with the 6 jets is I want you to climb straight up, canopy to canopy, about 20 feet apart from each other, and then we want you to turn and go straight down belly to belly. And his dad and I looked at each other and go, that's not possible. But that's the kind of stuff
you can do it once, maybe.
Once.
Make sure you get that.
Very exciting ending, but we're going to need 6 new jets at the end.
In that community, you mentioned hoping you get the call, and Randy, maybe this is a question for you, because you've been in the industry too. Do you know that movie is out there getting ready? Like, they're starting to find the cast, the people behind the camera. Like, do you know that's out there, and you're hoping you get this call? I don't know. Is this a question for both of you?
We know it's out there.
It's out there.
So there's luck, and then there's kind of willing luck. Like, sometimes you have to make decisions in life and try to position yourself as best possible. And I think that's what we did with this movie. I was at a disadvantage probably because of my age, right? A lot of my colleagues were
younger,
highly experienced, very young. And I had a dream. It's funny. I had this image, this dream that I wanted to build an airplane that was maneuverable and flew the most advanced camera gimbal in the world. Because the jet experience I was doing for the past 10 years of flying camera jets was very antiquated, older technology. Mm-hmm. And when I'd worked with Tom on Jack Reacher 2, I think it was, he brought it up. This is 2014. And he said, Kev, one day we're going to make Top Gun. It wasn't called Maverick then. He just said, we're going to make it one day. And I remembered that. And he told me, he's like, it's all got to be real. And we don't have the right technology. So 2 years later on Paint and Microsoft, whatever, I'm sitting in bed and I picked an L-39 because it was a really cool jet. Flat belly, great aspect, look around it ratio if you put the camera on the nose. And I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to figure out how to make. And my dad said, well, don't be an idiot. Find someone who's really good with L-39s. Well, by the way, I did this AT&T commercial
Oh my God.
with Randy Howell. And because of that AT&T commercial, my dad was like, you have to go talk to Randy. And if you're going to do that, you're never going to do it without Randy's help. So I pitched it to Randy, and instead of throwing me out of his building saying I was crazy, he said, yeah, we can do that.
How easy was it to say yes on that, Randy? I mean, I don't know what the pitch was like. I have to imagine for anybody who ever watched Top Gun and got into aviation, you're like, how can I be a part of it? But when you talk about like what you saw the first time with Kevin's dad, was it a hard sell for you to be a part of this?
Not really. We had the assets here. We had the engineering ability here. And we started, a couple weeks later, he brought the shot over system up. We literally hung it from a forklift and slid it underneath and said, yeah, that looks cool, but how do we get this attached to that and be able to fly it at 350 knots and 3 Gs? And the unit wasn't even certified. It's a helicopter unit. And Kevin says, no, but I know the factory guys, we're working with them, we're gonna get this thing beefed up and great. And then we started doing the mounting of it. And it was complex, but it was doable. So once we got it mounted on there, and I'll let you speak on this, Kev, he says, I'm gonna talk to the factory and get them to add some things to it and beef up the arms and a few things, and then they'll send it to us and we can test fly it. So we started test flying and found that their data wasn't exactly what we found because we started breaking things on it. And then Kevin would talk to the factory again. And what all did you have done? Initially, it was the arms, right?
Yeah, and this is a shout out, testament to Shot Over Camera Systems. They beefed up the arms. They took them to destruction in a wind tunnel. They had to change out the pinions, the gears, bigger motors. Everything had to get beefed up because it's exponential. I mean, the amount of force that gimbal is going to feel as you increase the knots, it's huge. So, and like Randy said, there was a huge learning period. So if you imagine the pitch, here's this young guy walking in, this amazing professional institution, if you will, saying, yeah, sir, I want to put this wild camera on the front of your jet for a movie I don't know if I'm going to get.
Don't call me sir again.
Okay, yeah. And by the way, I want to fly it. I didn't have any L-39 time, and there's nothing proven about it. So Randy is one of those folks who just has a really good sense of business and timing. And regardless of what I said and did, it made sense. And if it weren't for the Patriot Jet Team's technicians, pilots, engineers, that never would have been done in time.
This all came in phases too. They first beefed up those arms, and we didn't break an arm. They had beefed up, they had tested it, but we did start breaking gears. So then they put new gears in, steel gears instead of aluminum gears, right?
Yep, that's right.
And then they sent it out to us, and we started turning it 90 degrees to the flight path at 350 knots and 3 Gs. And we go, hey, the gears aren't breaking, but we can't get it pointed back again. So then they had to say, well, we need higher torque motors next. So then they put higher torque motors. And it was just one thing after another until they perfected it. And we tested it, and it worked out great. And there was a movie.
When does intake get in here?
So I'll tell that story. So Paramount calls and says, hey, we need 2 jets. Tom wants everything done for real. He's going to jump a motorcycle off a cliff. He's going to jump a motorcycle off a cliff. It's not going to be a stunt rider or CG'd, this off the cliff and a skydive. It has to be for real. That's the way he does movies. So all the Super Hornet stuff had to be done for real. Well, they had Super Hornets. They had approval from the Navy to provide those assets to Paramount. But Paramount couldn't go anywhere and find an F-14 for the movie. There was none flying. They couldn't go to Russia and ask for a couple, the only two Su-57s they have, the 5th gen jets in the movie. So they said, can you paint 2 L-39s gray? We want to put these targets on the side, on both sides of the tail, vertical tail, both sides of the nose, top and bottom of the wings. And then we want you to fly through the canyons and fly exactly what the F-14 and the 5th gen jets are going to fly. And then we'll CG in. So Tom was okay with that. It was his only option. But it was as real as you can possibly get. So that last 8 minutes of the movie is what they needed to create. So Kevin asked me, hey, Randy, we need 2 of them. So where are you going to find another pilot? Well, I always like to stand out. So I look for an average pilot. And I said, you know, Intake's going to fit this bill just perfect. So I called up 5, not because he's that good, but because I can trust him, because he flies 5, I fly 6 on the Patriots Jet Team, and we fly opposing passes. And we're pretty tight, which takes a lot of trust between each other. So we had that, and called Intake up, and Intake's motto in life is always say yes. You know, some are just say no, but Intake's is always say yes. So I said, Intake, would you be interested? Yes. I haven't even told you yet.
It was about that fast.
Yeah. I said, you want to do some flying with Kevin LaRosa and I? And he says, I already said yes. So anyway, that's the way it started, and we brought Intake in. And I'm just kidding. Intake's, and he's almost, no, I won't say it that way. He's an excellent pilot, and we've got a lot of trust between each other, and was the perfect fit.
How frustrated are the other folks on the team that Intake got that call and somebody else didn't?
So the reason Intake, and that was a little bit on Tom's part, is they wanted somebody that was Navy, and we had 2 guys Navy, both of them former Blue Angels, and Intake just happened to be a guy that I'm always flying with in formation and have the most trust with. So I think, you know, I'm sure the other guys have never mentioned anything. Every one of them would have done a great job, but they wanted a Navy guy.
Yeah.
And Intake was just fit the bill perfect for what they wanted.
The rest of the team hates him now, though.
I know, I was going to say, like, you're probably not getting many Christmas cards.
But I don't think that had anything to do with the movie.
I don't have any friends.
Obviously.
Yeah, that didn't have anything to do with this. It was me in general.
Yeah, what was, so Intake, obviously, for the people who've heard us talk, the first Top Gun was a big deal.
Sure.
In your life, really changed the trajectory, potentially, of where you went. What was it like getting that call for you?
So I started flying with the team in 2017, and as Randy and I think very similarly in the plane, and there's a tremendous complement between us. I know what he's thinking, he knows what I'm thinking, and that trust and respect is there for sure. I knew that they were working on the Cinejet and that they were working on the gimbals and that they were going to submit a package to be the airborne cinematographer, and I said, if there's an opportunity, I'd be happy to help. And so in, I think it was December of 2018, when they started working up the actors and actresses, Randy had called. I have combat experience in the Navy piece, and so we went down to Camarillo with 2 jets, and we trained up Glenn and Monica and Danny and Jay and all of the actors and actresses. And Randy was Tom's primary trainer. Kevin had flown with him as well. I didn't meet Tom until after Maverick. So we trained them so that they could act in the plane at high G, and Randy and I went out and did dogfights in the L-39 so that they could get the high aspect passes while beginning to act 8G turns so that they could work through that before they got into the F-18. And it wasn't until probably June of 2019 when Randy called and said, they want to film the final fight scene. And before he finished fight scene, I said, yes. Where? When? I'll be there. I'm in. And that's when I don't know if you and I had met before that, Kevin.
No, Top Gun Maverick was our introduction.
Yeah, no, as far as before, while we were training them, I think it was probably in Camarillo when we showed up and started working through the actual storyboards and those kind of things.
So I know when you've been interviewed before, Kevin, you've mentioned one of the things that makes Top Gun so tough, this film, was all the actors and actresses. It's got to be the real thing, right? Real aircraft, real human in the aircraft. So as the aerial coordinator, what are the big blocks that you have to put in place to make this happen? I assume training's a massive component.
It is training, proficiency, and compliance, legality, and right people, which we obviously ended up with. We had rules. Top Gun Maverick rule number 1. It's got to be real. That's rule number 1, and everyone
Were these
loves
written, Kevin, or no?
I think they're unwritten to keep us from getting ourselves in trouble, but they were common operating rules of how we worked on this movie.
And from Tom Cruise's mouth, or is this you've worked with him before and you're like, this is his
That's
vision?
straight out of Tom's mouth. That's back
Very high volume.
and multiple times. And we're thankful for that, right? I mean, as an aviation community or just a general population who enjoys Top Gun Maverick, we're very thankful for that. Because had that not been rule number 1, it wouldn't have looked as good.
It would have just been another movie.
I mean, I do movies all the time where it's not feasible or it's not affordable. We shoot blank sky and they add an aircraft in, or an Iron Man, or a missile, and the camera's just panning around blue sky. We could tell. You can tell. Most people can tell. And when you watch Top Gun Maverick, well, it almost looks like there's an F-14 or an Su-57 really flying. It's because they were really there flying. So we had to abide by rule number 1, and we were happy to do it.
That's like the best commander's intent ever.
Oh.
Right? Like if you just have one thing you got to operate by, it determines everything you do from there on out.
The flying was priceless.
Rule number 2 is don't die. No. To Intake's point, I mean, it was. I mean, you say it best. I mean, with your Blue Angel flying and the Patriot Jet flying, what have you told me? How does that compare against?
People would always ask, oh, how was it? Was it real? I've got 750 air shows, 91 combat missions, 650 traps plus. This was the most intense, I don't want to say high risk because we briefed it at great length, but it was the most intense, in-depth flying I have ever done because it was demanded to be low, it had to be tight, and we'll show you some, the nose to tail, the visual parallax, and how do you not hit Randy, not hit Kevin, not hit the walls, not hit the pelicans when you're over water, and not fly through the jet wash, pine trees. I mean, it was just all under 100 feet. If we got up to 100 feet, it was too high, and Kevin would say, that was nice, but you need to
Good job, guys, but it was a good rehearsal.
Take it down a little bit. Okay.
One of the risks that I saw there is we went out and scouted all these canyons with Kevin in the helicopter and took notes and tried to put it in our heads, okay, this canyon wall, this tree. But one of the highest risk and concerns that I had is you're coming up deep into the canyon, Kevin flying over top of us, either me right behind Intake or Intake right behind me, and you're looking out ahead at this canyon wall. Okay, I'm gonna hug the left side of this, is gonna take a 6G pull around this canyon wall, around this mountain on my right with canyon wall on the left, and a 6G pull come right around, then I'm gonna come in, roll inverted over the top of the next one. And then just about as the time you're going in, you start thinking and second guessing yourself and go, wait, was this the one that takes 6 Gs, or is this the one that would take about 20 Gs to get around? And that's not gonna work. So then you start second guessing, and sometimes there were a few times that I go, I'm pretty sure of this, but I'm not 100% sure of this when I get around in 6 Gs, so I'm just gonna go up over top of the hill, roll inverted, pull down the other side. Better safe than sorry. But that was one of my biggest concerns is we had, I believe it was 40 miles of the Feather River that was blocked off for us, that nobody was in that canyon for 40 miles. You start running through these canyons and pretty soon you go, wait, was that tree or was, I'm not sure now. So you just pull up and start over another day, another time.
Right, we would run 3 flights a day. We'd meet in the morning. Kevin would go through the storyboards. How do you want to set it up? And that's when we would start briefing and we'd have the models and what's going to look right. And we would use his aerial coordinator eye to the reality of what the airplanes can do. We'd use it with models. We would walk through it like we do with the Patriot Jet Team. Where's Kevin going to be? Where's Randy going to be? Where am I going to be? What's the comm going to be? So that before we even got in the jet, we had talked about it, briefed it, walked it, visualized it. Now let's go out and execute. And we would start high at 100 feet on the runs.
Crazy.
And then, Kevin, what do you think? Because we'd do a lap through the river, chasing each other, and then we'd pop up, and if he was flying the Phenom, we'd do one teardrop. All right, Kevin, what do you have? You know, do this, move this forward, move this back. It was never back. It was, you know, move it forward. Can you get closer? Can you get tighter? Can you go faster? Can you pull more G? And then, so we'd probably run, I don't know, 8 to 10 on a tank of gas up and down the river. But then it got to the point, to Randy's point, where we would brief it the next day and say, oh, by that tree, because we knew there would be one pine tree that we'd take 10 feet off of the left wing, or the granite S turn, or the cliff wall, and then we could start.
You're like building the picture, this
It developed a little bit more with each flight, and 3 times a day as we're flying it.
It's really important. Like the 30,000 foot view down, and what we're talking about is the final fight sequence of Top Gun Maverick. For those like listening to this, as soon as that F-14 that was just stolen by Rooster and Maverick gets engaged, that's these two from then on. And it was, those aircraft weren't available. The Navy also had their full-time job to do, and they had supported the movie amazingly. And that's that sequence. These guys are literally responsible as the F-14 pilot and the SU-57 pilot all the way until the F-14 gets to the carrier. And that whole sequence was done using their skill sets and their knowledge and their safety. And actually, safety, a big testament to Randy. Randy became a little bit of my secret weapon on the movie. We talked about putting together the right team. Randy came in on the movie as a backup Cinejet pilot to me, but I quickly learned that one of the best skill sets he has is de-risking and mitigation of risk. And it was an easy sell to me to production when I said, look, Randy's background, 27,000 hours or something like that, his background of being part of this every single day is going to keep people alive and keep us safe. Because my job is, here's the line where people die. We don't want to go here. Here's the line where it's the most amazing aerial cinematography you've ever seen. We want to live on that line. And we want to stay out of this gray area between there. And Randy kept us out of the gray area. Literally every brief, we would always finish by looking at Randy, right? And we would look at you and go,
at this basically.
Yeah.
okay, Randy, what you got? And he'd sit there with a notepad and you go, okay, the pine tree with the big dead branch that you're barely going to miss intake. Remember that, it was just that detailed.
How much of that planning came from, maybe it's the blues, I don't know if that's how you prep military, is that how you prep in Hollywood? Is it a combination that you guys learn together, like we got to brief and rehearse this way?
Oh, I think it was probably a combination. The best parts of our 40,000 hours of experience.
All coming together.
And when you would recognize that, Randy had a better way, Kev had a better way, how do we, and we honored that with each other.
With the Patriots Jet Team, we've got former Thunderbirds, former Blue Angels, former Canadian Snowbird. Whenever we create a new maneuver or a new process to mitigate risk, we look at each one of those as well as the civilian guys and go, the Blues do it this way, Thunderbird. But what is the best? Well, some of it might come from the Blues, some of it might come from the Canadian Snowbirds.
But mostly from the Blues.
We let him think that. And I think that same thing translated over to our Cinejet team is we took Kevin's experience, we took intakes, we took mine, and we came up with a solution that best fit. It might not be all mine, it may not be all Kevin's, but we created something that would fit us combined with that experience and skill level that we brought to the team.
I think this is a super important safety point too, because you get to a certain level, none of us like to be corrected or told we have a bad idea. Or the beauty of this team is at the brief, we would ensure that everybody was on board, that there weren't any questions. And at any point you could say, stop, let's talk this out and get and open our aperture on it a little bit. And there was never any ego involved because there couldn't be. And I think the safety record showed that.
Yeah. How about for you, Kevin? You mentioned how young you were at the time. I mean, it's not that long ago. Young guy in this major role with this type of film. Intimidating, sitting there trying to tell these guys, hey, do it again, but get closer? Or have you just dealt with, you've dealt with talent enough now?
You know what it is? It's, if I was worried that what I told them would create a negative outcome, meaning they would do something they shouldn't do, then we'd have a problem. They understand when I'm in my aircraft, whether it's the helicopter or the Cinejet or a Phenom, I'm flying that aircraft, and at the same time, I'm having to direct the shot they're flying. And when you look at things through a lens, it looks a whole lot different than what they're seeing.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite flying, and there's two categories. This is really cool. There's camera ships and picture ships. Camera ships are everything that's behind the camera. Picture ships is what we see in the movie. Picture ship flying is highly precise, predictable, and measured in a whole different way. And usually when you're flying a picture ship, you're gonna do stuff that you would never do or put an aircraft in a position that doesn't make sense, but it looks better on camera. It's all about the lensing and the way it looks. So that whole thought process, they'll do something and I'll hear in their voice because they'll call me on the down and, oh, Kevin, any notes? And then they're exhausted, right? Because they just were missing everything. And I can give them a note, even though I know they just went through hell down there, and say, yeah, guys, it was really good, but I need it again, and I need you to get a little closer, Intake. And Intake knows, like, he knows how close he can get. He knows if that's it, and he's gonna do what he can do, and that's the note I can give him.
Can I tell a quick story about that really quick? Yeah. So we were trying to get a shot, vertical shot, where you point, Kevin's in a helicopter, and it just happened to be the storyboard piece that I was filming. And we talked about it, and you want the jet to come up to the helicopter, and so you can look down the intake. So you're actually pulling up past the lead, is what we would call it, above the helicopter, and then you get right up to it, and then you duck under it. And so I've flown really close to some other planes, and the first time we do it, I'm pretty doggone close, and I bumped into the helicopter. And now, but recognize, Kevin and I have only known each other for less than a week, but we have built this literally life trust with each other. And so we do it to kind of demo it, right, after we had talked about it, and then we start pushing a little. And I come in and I push off the one. I'm like, oh.
How close are we talking?
Really close. Vertical stab to helicopter skid, 15 feet.
Oh my God.
On the bunt. And so on one of them, I'm like, oh, so close. What do you got for me, Kevin? He's like, I think you can bring it closer.
And you're sitting in the
Can you get a little closer? I mean,
he's the one looking at me.
Yeah.
you get very used for what I do, especially when you're having assets come at you like that. You get really used to what that looks like and feels like.
Oh my God.
And it is 100% trust. Like, I know he's not going to hit me. And it feels a little abnormal when you first start doing it. But when you're looking at the image, a lot of times, the audience doesn't realize this, a lot of times what you see on camera is way closer in person.
Oh, yeah.
And people ask me all the time, like, what was it like filming it? I was like, it was more exciting than watching it. Because things are bigger, closer, and happen faster than they do on the lens. So in order to make things look really dynamic on camera, you usually gotta really push it.
Get it close.
And get it in there.
I should have mentioned when we kicked off a disclaimer for all the mothers out there who have a kid listening to this who's going to be like, sign me up. Hollywood stunt pilot, military aviator. I'm sure we're getting a few of them. I was wondering if we could use some of the props here for a second to give an idea of what you were just describing.
Stick models are imperative, and I use them all the time. Go ahead, you want to talk about it?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, we can talk about it. You can use words all you want, but until you have something like this and you're stick modeling it, and then you go walk it, now you're just ingraining in your brain. You're practicing a rehearsal. It's like an aerobatic routine for every single sortie we did, and we would use stick models. And we would do things where, like, if I was a static helicopter and I'd have Randy coming at me and both of them were gonna split, maybe it was like they're crossing and I need minimum nose-tail separation, and we'd literally be in a hangar at our table and we'd brief it. We'd have like terminology. I'd line them up and I'd say, okay guys, in 3, 2, 1, ready, break. right? And they'd hit it and they're exhausted. And of course, I'd always come back and be like, it was great, guys. It was awesome. I need it again. And I need you to bring it in tighter. So.
And so the interesting thing to the parallax, and this was new to me as a fighter pilot, was the cinematography piece and what it looks like on to the camera ship from the picture ship. And so I had to make that disconnect of the way that I would operationally employ this weapon systems to what looks right for the employment of the system. And so we would, as we'd go through the canyon, the lower pilot, the chase pilot, so Kevin would be in the Phenom, and you have to, you're looking down because it looks right. And then as you look at the movie, Randy and I are doing this because it just looks dynamic. Cool. So we purposefully are out of sync. Each of these turns is 3 to 4 Gs. And then you've got to make sure that the nose to tail is correct, but you're a little bit low. So this guy is trying not to hit the walls, trying not to hit Randy. Randy's trying to keep the distance between Kevin and the Phenom or the helicopter.
It's pretty simple. If my camera, if I'm on the Phenom and the camera's looking behind me, if he's there at a proper area to probably get a guns kill, from here, it doesn't look like he's lined up. He needs to be there, actually on camera, to really stack it. So it doesn't make sense. Here's the scary part I remember about that. It's funny you brought that up, and I haven't talked about this since the movie. We're over the water, and I'm in the Phenom, and they're chasing me. So this is, for the fun of it, this is Tom and Rooster. This is Maverick and Rooster in the F-14, out of ammo, giving everything they got to evade a guns kill from a 57 on their tail. We remember that scene. It's awesome. Well, it's these guys. And we needed to be as close to the water as possible. What happens when you're close to something? More ground rush, right? You could be doing Mach 10 at 50,000 feet, and it doesn't look that fast. We put something next to it, you're hauling ass.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to get you low to the water, for one. Oh, and by the way, can we do this in low light so the sun is right in everybody's eyes, so the airplanes are golden, so now it's hard to see.
And can we put them in a single engine jet 20 miles off the coast near the Channel Islands so that if something does go sideways, at least you're going to be swimming for a long time. You know, I mean, it was...
The weirdest thing for me, and I remember I'm in the Phenom and we needed to get lower. And when I had a -2 and a -3, and I need to get lower. And I remember telling you guys, because I'm compressing the back guy who's intake, and I can't tell how low you are to the water, and he's behind you and you're below me. So I'm like, guys, can I come down? And I'd hear you come back and like, yeah, come down a little bit.
Because I always say yes. Maybe I shouldn't.
So I'd bring the Phenom down 20 feet. We do it again. Intake, can I bring it down a little more? Yeah, maybe a little bit more. So right up until Randy's like, did you see that whale breach?
Tell him that.
Oh yeah, I said so. We were filming this piece right here, and all of a sudden, this whale breached right in front of me. And I said immediately, to Intake, did you see that whale? What'd you say?
I said, almost hit the thing. And then the joke was, hey, how did Intake die? He hit a whale. Oh, I didn't know he had a boat. He was in a plane.
What speed are you going when you're down that low in that shot?
What were you running in the Phenom?
We were at the top of the red line for that gimbal, which was 300 knots.
Yeah, it's moving along. So let's go to the canyon and the helicopter.
Hey, before that, I got to bring this up, and this just reflects. This just reflects the skills of Intake. So Kev asked him to do something. I can't remember. I was off the side, or I was following, I think. No, I was in front. You were behind. Kevin asked us to come underneath the Phenom. I don't know, pull up, roll, pull, or something like that. So I come through, I do that. Then Intake comes through, and then I hear Kev go, "Are you okay, Intake?" And he goes, yeah, I think so. And I turn around and I see Intake flying off this. Oh, what's he going that direction for? You remember that?
How could I forget?
He departed. He pulled too hard. He got too excited. He pulled too hard. Tell us about that. What happened?
Something similar to that. So
you tell the real story.
We're trying to do the Su-57 pirouette,
happen.
right? And it kind of looked like that, actually.
Close.
And so we're trying to do the pirouette maneuver, 5th gen in a 3rd gen airplane, and we had tried it, and I'm starting to get a little frustrated. And so I push some negative, throw some rudder in, and the plane went, I don't think that's, no thanks. And so Kev says, you okay, Intake? Stand by. Yeah, as recovered and ended up going back and, a thorough debrief, discussion about it. How can we do it better? What can we do next time? And
It was a tumble is what it was.
Was it a
tumble.
frustration or no, it was a...
trying to make a maneuver, back to the physics of aviation, right? Trying to make a maneuver with the plane that doesn't have vectored thrust or fly-by-wire and just trying to make those things happen.
I mean, it was that way throughout the movie, though. We had to make F-18s and L-39s fly to sometimes replicate an aircraft they were not. And that fully became the responsibility of the skilled crew to fly an aircraft in a way it really wasn't meant to be flown and be able to come back safely and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the canyon one day, we're briefing. It's the first time, and this is in the movie also. It's my favorite scene, actually, because we're going under Kevin, and you'll see it right at the end. It happens like that, where Maverick and Rooster are being chased, when all of a sudden you see the top of the planes. And that's 20, 30 feet off the canyon floor. Well, that's Randy and I going under Kevin's helicopter at about 50 feet. And so I don't necessarily recall who was in the front or the back because we'd filmed it a couple times. And as Kevin's briefing it in the morning, he said, and then you'll go under the helicopter. Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. And so like Randy would say, so we're chasing each other through the canyon back and forth. And he talked about the terrain masking where you would roll inverted and pull down to maintain no more than 50 feet above the ground. Very combat realistic as you're trying to stay under enemy radar. And we're doing that. And so we'd come around this S-turn that we talked about that's all granite, and it happens really fast. And Kev would be in the helicopter in a little nook, and he couldn't hear the radio calls because we're so low. So it all happened as we come up and around and pull and roll. And then Kevin could finally hear us talking with the cue words, and then the helicopter would go whoop, back out, into the river. Contact, poof, poof, underneath the helicopter as we went. You can probably tell it just by the excitement of it.
Yeah.
It's just
a shot like
exhilarating.
that is created over months, briefed over days, and executed in a way where it could take 2 days to get it right, and it's in the movie for a second or two. But it looks cool, right? And we watch the movie, and you don't really get the opportunity to break anything down, but you see that shot real quick, and everybody's just thinking, well, it's really awesome, it's dynamic. Well, for us, it was a monumental difference in anything I've ever seen before done, and 1,000% trust. And it's briefed that we're going to lose comms. It's a lost comm situation where they're on the downwind, and I say, okay, guys, as briefed, as planned, I'm at this turn, at this altitude, I'm going to call contact as soon as I see you. If I don't get contact, I'm shoving the helicopter into this nook, like literally just tucked into this rock, so things can go by and not hit me. And every time it happened, to say there was no surprises. It's surprising when they come around the corner, but they were where they were supposed to be. And it was as previously briefed. Like usually those words are supposed to be very boring words in any type of flying, as previously briefed, right? Well, that moment of sheer terror was as previously briefed and to spec. And it was a moment of, okay, they're gonna pop out in 3, 2, 1 and a half, and oh, gotcha, okay, I see you in action, and gone. Done, in the can. And then, of course, it's pretty good, guys. Can you get a little tighter?
Yeah.
One of the things that, and I don't know who's responsible for what you hear in that movie with the radio calls, but I've never been in a dogfight or trained in one, but I do remember what it was like in combat when the radios are blowing up and you're trying to manage air to air, you're talking to your backseat, or you got guys on the ground taking fire. It just put me back in the moment, like hearing the radio calls and how crazy it is at certain parts of that movie. So I don't know if that's y'all, helping the cast understand what that's like, or if it was.
I got to give a shout out to the guy that was the mastermind behind the sequence where all hell broke loose with the SAMs.
Yes.
So that's the Naval Coordinator, Brian Ferguson, call sign Ferg. Ferg was in charge of everything that flew in the movie on the Navy side. He was my counterpart, but Navy, and I was civilian. that wasn't scripted that way. When you watch Top Gun Maverick, that scene was supposed to look highly different. It was going to be more simple, couple of missiles chasing maybe one guy in particular, two people. That was the movie. The movie was changed when Ferg, in a brief one day, played a video for the director Joe Kosinski. The video is a real video. You probably know what it is. I think it's over Iraq. He's an F-16 driver, and he gets lit up by Sam after Sam after Sam. And if you haven't seen it, for those that are veterans and even not, go search it online.
Yeah, we'll try to pull it for
because this guy, he starts defending. Everything's by the book. You hear his voice, very calm demeanor. Missiles are in there, defending to the north, whatever. And by the end of what to him probably seemed like a lifetime, which was only really 2 or 3 minutes of evading all these different SAMs, his airplane is out of energy and he is toast. It sounds like he can barely talk. He's so tired, and he does it. But the moral of the story is when that was played for Joe, Joe's kind of brain, and Joe's a very clever director, and Joe realized that fog of battle, the confusion of stuff everywhere, and the information that's being disseminated on the radio to multiple different team members and different controlling aircraft, when all hell breaking loose, it kind of gives you chills for probably that moment. And it was rewritten to be in a way where it was very accurate, and you could tell me because I'm civilian, but when all those missiles are going on and the guys are defending to the north and defending here and moving here and flares blowing out everywhere, and there's one shot in particular that was very important. It's where the camera's pulling out. It's me in the helicopter over the Cascade Mountain Range. Michael Fitzmaurice is our camera operator, aerial DP, and we had one F-18, and it's just this slow, widen out shot. And when you watch the movie, a couple F-18s are doubled, and all the SAMs are in the air, and it's to show the audience this is hell for a second for these guys. And it gives me chills to think about it because I think it's accurate, and I'll hand it back to you about that. But
yeah, the chaos, like you said, in the moment. There's the radio transmissions, there's what is received, and then there is what is heard and processed. And being lit, I got lit up over Baghdad during shock and awe. And, you know, it starts going off, and you're like, you have my attention. Is there actually a missile in the air, or are they just flashing us to try to get us to defend and deplete our energy? And so I think that aspect of it was exceptionally real.
Yeah, so impressive. As we kind of wrap up on Top Gun, any particular moments that you really think back on from that experience? I know we talked about several of them, but starstruck, some of the detailed flying and high intensity flying, like stuff that you still think back on today?
All of it.
Yeah.
I think of all of it. I think of the people we flew with, these guys who became my family, all of it.
Absolutely. I think about it, and for the 3 times I've watched Top Gun Maverick, maybe a few more.
Yep.
No, especially the last 8 minutes, right?
Yeah, that 8 minutes. Those guys are good.
So we all went to Mann's Chinese Theater for the premiere.
Awesome. Yeah.
And we all went, we're sitting next to each other. Randy and I hadn't seen it other than having flown it, so that we were interested in that last 8 minutes. And
Oh, you hadn't seen it yet?
no.
Wow.
Not in its entirety Kevin had, but we had.
Yeah, we're sitting this close to each other, and we're pretty excited. And
I told him it was just all right.
Yeah, you guys think it'll be.
I nudge, Randy and I nudge each other, and I'm like, that's me. He's like, nah, I'm pretty sure they cut all your stuff, Intake. And we had some good ribbon about it. But I think the overall experience, I mean, what an opportunity to have flown in it. It is an iconic, legendary movie, and to have had the privilege to do it is what, I don't want to say weighs heavy, but it's not lost on me what the opportunity was, thanks to Randy and getting to fly with Kevin. And I get choked up thinking about it, actually.
I mean, if we can grab the SAG award at this point to talk through that.
Yeah, I'll grab it.
And as you're grabbing that, Kevin, maybe a question to you is, where do you go from here? It sounds...
It's done, there's nothing.
I mean, yeah, like
Life's
how do
over.
you take it to the next level, I guess? Or is this now the technology that people are going to use for the next 10 years to do this type of thing?
Where I take it is, well, you'll have to build. If you're not innovating, you're dying. And yeah, we worked on an incredible movie, and I think our team did a fantastic job, but you don't stop. You never stop in anything in life, business, whatever you're doing. So in my mind, we were afforded this amazing opportunity to be part of such a great project. We learned a lot. We did some amazing things. People say we set the bar in motion picture aviation. So that means our job now is to raise that bar. And we don't have a movie yet to do that, but you can't wait. And we didn't wait with the Cinejet, right? We did that ahead of time. I just recently started a company called X Brand, which is Advanced Aviation Cinematography, and that's what that company is to the core. And I have some amazing partners, including the aerial director of photography from Top Gun Maverick and some of the great technicians and then engineers. X Brand's job is to be a worldwide synonymous name with motion picture aviation at its finest. My goal for the next 30 years is to attempt to perfect, nothing's perfect, aviation cinematography with the best platforms and the best technology and the best people. Yeah. And that's what that is.
And that's making the products as well. Is that part of it, Kevin?
Or finding them and putting them on and merging them with something just like the Cinejet was.
Okay. Right now we're talking about Gen 2 of the Cinejet. So that's our next venture.
Awesome. All right, so for those who don't know what the SAG Awards are, can we share what that is and what this award represents?
Howler.
Kevin?
No, you.
Yeah, go for it. I love it.
So we received this award as a team, and we're very proud of it, but it's given to us by the Screen Actors Guild, and it says Outstanding Action Performance by a Stunt Ensemble in a Motion Picture, and then it has our names, and we each receive this. But we're all very proud of it, and it means a lot to us, and we'll remember it forever and remember the movie forever.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to recognize we have the opportunity to do this podcast, but all of the Navy pilots that are active duty, that flew it, that couldn't receive the award, but did an incredible amount of flying. The sailors on the ships, it's their award too.
That's
it's
cool.
Just a pleasure to receive it on there.
There's one other unsung hero that I learned on the movie, and there's a sequence in Top Gun, again, that was rewritten, most people don't know about, and it's when Tom is on the beach with Jennifer Connelly, and he tells her the news that he's going to be the one that's going, and that was originally written in a way where she was upset with him. They didn't have that same dynamic that we see in the movie, and most people don't know this. And again, the folks from the Navy, Ferg, and a few others said that's not how that works. A military spouse is someone who can be upset with you for a second that you're leaving, but at the end of the day, they're your rock, right?
Yeah.
And as aviators, the last thing we need is perceived pressure from a loved one that's upset with us for us doing our job, our duty, or what, I'm a civilian, their duty for what they have to do. And in the movie, I think that was beautifully portrayed. I always get something in my eyes sometimes when I see that sequence.
I may or may not have teared up at that point too, because I saw myself on the pier with my wife and kids and saying goodbye. So I appreciate you.
What I've learned is what these guys do, what active military, retired, and the people that have paid the ultimate price, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for our freedom today. The people that pay the price all the time and they're unsung are the military spouses and the families who have to stay home and worry every single day about getting that call. And when the men and women are out there doing their job, they're thinking about their families. But to be home and not know if you're going to get that phone call, that is a very difficult job, and that doesn't get praised enough.
And that's you now, Intake. We talked about this on the podcast where you were that person before the one leaving on the pier, and now you've got kids who are out flying.
So Wyatt and Nick are both fighter pilots now. Wyatt's in Lemoore flying F-18s. Nick is flying T-45s in training. And when Wyatt went to the ship for the first time, I was exceptionally proud, but then I woke up later that night, literally in the middle of the night, and sat up, and I thought, it's so dangerous.
What are you thinking? I can't believe you.
It was okay for me, but not for my kids. But I'm super proud of them, right? And sons, daughters, that's the foundation of our armed forces. Moms, dads, that's what makes the country great.
Let's take this. I did want to ask one question just about the award. You don't have to bring it back up. But Kevin, you've been in this industry a long time. What is it that, from an award standpoint, that you're gunning for in this industry? Is it a SAG award? Is it an Academy Award? Do they have something for the stunt action side of things?
I'm gunning for the fact that I want to do this until I retire, and I want all of my friends who I get to work with to be able to go home safely.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're not fighting any wars. We're making pretty pictures. With that said, once you bring everybody home safely, the next goal is to push the limit. And we always say this: we fly right up into that line, right to the red line, and we don't go past it. And we de-risk wherever we possibly can to the extent possible to still get the shot. So it's kind of our motto, and create groundbreaking aerial cinematography. But at the end of the day, we need to come home.
So with this, I want to talk about where we are here, right? So the Patriot Jet Team. I think the question to you, Randy, is, well, number one, this is the coolest man cave I've ever been in, right? And that includes every place I've been with the CIA, which I think they do this kind of thing pretty well. But how did you create this? What does the Patriot Jet Team do?
You know, a little bit different than Intake's route. When I was a kid, my dad took me to see the Blue Angels. I was about 10 years old at the local airport, Palm Beach International Airport. When I watched them, at the end, my dad said, "Would you like to do that someday?" And I go, "Actually, I want to own my own jets, Dad." So it was as early as that I wanted to start a team. So in the mid-90s, after the fall of the wall, I brought in 6 MiG-17s. Put 3 of them together, went on the air show circuit with 2 of them, and flew an formation aerobatic routine with the MiGs. It was very successful for 7 years. Had an incredible sponsor at the time. After 9/11, we lost that sponsor for some political reasons after 7 years. And I had been collecting L-39s like you see behind us here, thinking that if we lost this sponsor, we probably wouldn't have another one for the MiGs. So I better switch airplanes. So about the European L-39 made in Prague. At that time, we started in 2003 with 2 airplanes. In 2004, went to 3 airplanes. 2005, went to 4 airplanes. A few years later, jumped to 6 airplanes. Now we got our 6-ship team, and we've been flying that ever since. This is our 21st season. And as I've been told, and I believe firmly, is these airplanes don't fly on Jet A. They fly on vinyl. So the vinyl on the side of the jets, and we are always looking for more vinyl, more sponsors, more partnerships with those that may need a 6-jet team to bring their name to the forefront in our country. And we're very proud of what we've done. We're very patriotic by the name. And we have a lot of fun with it as well.
Probably a tough question to answer, maybe not. Why do you do this? I mean, there are any number of other ways you could be involved in aviation. Why this?
So a lot of people have asked that question, and I really think the answer is the next time when I come back in my next life, I'm going to work for a team. I'm not going to start the team and own it. But really what I do this for is I'm passionate about aviation. I'm really passionate about formation aerobatics in front of millions of spectators. That's just what I love to do, as well as give back to the aviation community with our foundation, where the Patriots Jet Team Foundation mentors and educates youth in American aviation and STEM-related career paths. We cater to over 8,000 kids a year. But what I really do all of this for is the Patriot folks are my family, including Intake, including Kev. It is a family. We sit down at air shows, we break bread together, we converse just like a family. And I love that part of it. The camaraderie is what I love, both with the Patriots and with the Cinejet filming team. So that's why I'm here. That's why I do this. And it is a lot of work, but I love every minute. And somebody told me long ago, if you find a passion, You stick with it, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's me. I've never worked a day in my life.
Intake, for you then with this, I've noticed as you guys have just hanging out here, the ribbing that I remember from the military,
Sure.
it exists here, which is pretty cool and I think fairly rare outside of what I experienced at least. But it seems like y'all may as well have been flying together 30 years ago in a unit somewhere. It seems like you've got that same kind of camaraderie.
It's not ribbing, it's love.
It's love.
It's all love.
For people who aren't familiar with that style of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the aviation industry, right, if you're not getting harassed, then it means they really don't like you. So if they are harassing you, it means they're your friend. It's all volunteers, from the crew chiefs, the mechanics, to the pilots here on the team. And so when you ask Randy the question, it's for the love of the game. Why do you do it? It's exhilarating. It's a team. And everybody likes to belong to a team. These are our jerseys, right? I mean, I can't wait for an air show weekend.
We're here. Starts tomorrow.
I know. We're going to. We've got one coming up. It's exciting.
Can you, if you're comfortable saying what you mentioned to me about when you talked to your wife about taking this job, because I think it comes back to almost what you were talking about, Kevin, with the scene with Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, so I didn't realize the burden, as Kevin pointed out, that the family carries. My wife, Lisa, Wyatt, and Nick, an extended family. I would deploy, and I was on the pointy end, but they carried the burden because they didn't know whether the call was going to come. And so once I had retired from the military, then that kind of came out. And so when I tried out with Randy and we flew together, he said, I'd like to offer you the position of the number 5 pilot. And I was really excited. But I had to call Lisa. And I was driving to Sacramento. And I said, hey, they offered me the job. And she said, what do you think? And I said, well, it's what do you think? Is it okay if I do it? And she said, how did it make you feel? I said, it was exhilarating. It made me feel alive. And she said, then I think you should do it. And so I have done it since that day, and it is one of my greatest joys.
That's awesome. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, this is going to be a little technical on the aviation side for the layman helicopter pilot, but saw some of the footage of you flying with the Blues Intake. And you all have referenced this kind of going inverted and you're flying upside down effectively. Just a question, how are you maintaining orientation when you're doing this? Is it instruments? Is it visual? As I've seen, like in the Blues, you got somebody upside down, you got people coming up alongside of you. What is it that you're doing to stay level with this?
It's all visual.
All visual.
So Randy and I do an opposing inverted to inverted hit. And so he brings what we call the crowd, which is the distance separation between the two airplanes, and he'll bring it. We're having a good day when I have a windscreen full of Randy coming at me. And so I call and hit it, and we roll upside down, and it's all visual. And then you get a sense of what negative 1G feels like and what that level looks like in the windscreen. The challenge is you don't use a lot of wings to correct to the show center line. You would use rudder and longitudinally adjust, because if you do the wings, then you can really get some drift, and it's opposite. So if you go left, the airplane goes to the right, and so it's much more rudder focused, inverted. Okay. Was that the answer you're looking for?
Yeah. It was just, as I was watching that, preparing, I was like, how? Obviously, we don't do that in an Apache. So how do you maintain that, especially with other people coming formation, or when you're going head on, just maintaining where you're at spatially? So that is what I was looking for. We did not mention earlier, you do have a book coming out.
I do.
Right, so could you talk about where this came from?
Yeah, so with the Maverick piece, I was asked a lot, tell me about, how did you get to do that? And I was asked enough that I thought, well, I'll just write a book and tell the story. It's weird for me to say that I wrote a book.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, I saw Top Gun, I joined the Navy, and then I got to fly in Top Gun. It's a full circle. Yeah. I mean, it's a dream come true. And as you know now, your viewers helped pick the title, which is Full Throttle.
Nice.
And it's available on pre-order on Amazon.
Yep.
But 20% of the proceeds go to the Blue Angels Foundation to help prevent veteran suicide.
Awesome.
And I am my tombstone in Arlington can say some neat things. All I wanted to say is saved veterans' lives. And that is how instrumental that is to me in my life. So I wrote it to raise dollars, raise awareness. All the speeches that I give, all the funds go towards the Blue Angels Foundation. So
That's
something
awesome.
I'm really proud of.
Yeah. And for those who listened to our discussion, I know we touched on just a few, just tips of the iceberg there, and there's so much more in depth. So really, I'm excited. I pre-ordered one. I think I was
You're the first one.
First order.
First
so
order.
I'm feeling good about that. Kevin, I was wondering if I could come back to you. I know a little bit from having looked at some of your other interviews, but you mentioned offhandedly you come from 3 generations of pilots. How does one find their way into this career path that you did?
Luckily, the path was kind of in front of me as a kid. But what I learned as a teenager is what everybody learns. The path is never straight. It's curvy and zigzag, and it's messed up, and is even as easy as mine looked, because I had a father who did it. What I learned very quickly based on his wisdom, when I was 17, he said, "Hey, listen, you got a problem. We share the same name. You're a junior, and no one will ever trust you if you do what I do and you aren't an aviator first. Got to go into the world. You got to make your own mistakes. You got to fall down and get back up a bunch of times. You got to screw up. You got to become your own person, your own aviator, and you can't just be my son. You can't share the same last name. It doesn't guarantee you a slot in the industry." So,
how tough was that for you to hear?
oh, 17, know-it-all, teenage kid who's hanging out on movie sets, a little tough.
Yeah.
But I took it reluctantly. And these guys, my idol. And I did a lot of jobs. I did really cool jobs. I flew jet charter, and I flew helicopter chartered, medical helicopters and news helicopters. I did a bunch of stuff, all these different jobs, and I loved every one of them. And I always gave every one of them 100% of myself. I tried to be the best of my class, best of my position, every job I did, with the end goal never changing, never faltering, never lost sight of what I was going to become. My job was to go make mistakes, go build as many hours as I can, go become my own aviator, be my own person. And one day, he said, you and only you will know when you're ready. I can't make that decision for you. And for me, it was about 27 years old. I think I had 5,000 hours split between the two, and it just felt right. And so I think I can come back to what I always thought I would do. And I took the leap of faith and quit full-time work that was guaranteed, and a young family. And I never looked back. I fell right into where I always hoped I'd be. So that's how that happened.
Did you get to work with your dad on set?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
best memories ever.
Can you tell, I don't know, the first time you did that or one of the most memorable? Because that's got to be pretty special for him too, I have to imagine.
It started with cleaning trash cans and floors in his hangar, right? As any kid at summer
As it
job.
should be, yep.
And then I got to touch the aircraft. That was a big deal.
Yep.
And then I got to go flying with him in between stuff. So all that happening, going on set was really cool. And by the time I was allowed to go on set, I was driving a fuel truck, fueling his helicopter, and then I became a ground coordinator. It's a really cool position. It's like being an aerial coordinator. It's like what I do, but you're on the ground. And the years I spent on the ground, standing next to the director with a monitor in front of me, telling my dad where the director wanted him or what the ground cameras were seeing when he was flying the picture ship, really gave me the skill set, I think, of being able to talk people through a lens. That was huge. And then that's how I got my call sign, which is K2. And it's a really silly, stupid call sign, but when you have 2 Kevin LaRosas on set, and you both have radios, and someone calls Kevin, and we always answer, and someone's finally like, stop, you're K1, and you're K2, and it just never went away.
That's great.
Of course, I guess next time I mess up really, really bad, call signs tend to stick with you, but that's how that happened. Best memories ever. He's a hero of mine, a mentor. He was one of the main Airwolf pilots. I used to fly him as a baby, I guess. Guy's a living legend, in my opinion, in aviation. Yeah. And I'm lucky to be his son. I'm lucky to have gotten that hard advice.
Yeah. And you mentioned 3 generations. Who was
my grandfather?
Yeah, what did he do?
He flew for the Air Force. He was in the New Jersey National Guard, flew P-51 Mustangs and C-97s.
Oh, that's an awesome
Gave my dad his first airplane ride when my dad was 16. You go over to my dad's house or my house, and you can tell our lives are ingrained in aviation, just in historical photos and things we've done. We
Yeah.
literally eat, sleep, and breathe it. And like Randy said, it feels like we never worked a day in our life. Just because we're absolutely 100% doing the only thing we can ever imagine ourselves doing.
And you hired your dad many times for.
Well, yeah, it's the
right?
roles change now.
Oh my gosh.
It's actually
How
really
great.
funny. We bicker in the most fun way, right? Like he'll be like,
That's
well,
love.
I wouldn't have done
That
it that
is,
way.
that
Yeah,
is.
because if he tells you that, it must mean something. But you'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way. Oh, really? Really, Dad? But like that's the fun atmosphere. So to come full circle from the kid who was cleaning trash cans in his hangar to hiring this legend to be my ground coordinator is the coolest thing in the world.
That's super cool.
It's pretty neat.
But question for each of you. At least in Army aviation, we had a saying, it's not if you're going to have some type of incident, but when. I'm sure you've all had close calls. And I don't even know what they look like on the Hollywood side, but after talking to y'all, like flying through valleys and almost hitting trees and whales, I'm sure the opportunities are endless. What moment comes to each of you for that near miss incident in your flying careers?
So if I could give anybody any advice, you can't let your guard down. The flying we did on Top Gun Maverick, although you'd say risky, was highly calculated. And usually we were briefed where we were supposed to be. We were doing what we were supposed to do. Heart rates are elevated because you're seeing things that aren't quite normal and things are happening fast. But by and large, my opinion as the Arial Coordinator is the hundreds of hours that were flown on the movie and hundreds between F-18 and civilian assets, we did really good.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing I did to myself, and I give this to any aviator of any skill set of any level, you can't relax ever. And the stupidest thing I did on Top Gun Maverick was not even filming. It was flying a helicopter home. And I got pinched in weather. And I was always taught never again moments, right? And we do things and you say, I'll never do that again. It's a never again moment because I don't want to hurt myself or bend anything or kill myself. And on Maverick, I remember just cruising home, no big hurry, through the Grant Pass mountain range, which is really hardcore when you have bad weather in there. And I pinched myself a little bit and I didn't like it. It didn't feel good. And I remember thinking how stupid that is, that we're doing the most high caliber, high action flying in the world in aviation cinematography history and doing it really good. And then I relax.
On the way home.
Complacency.
Yeah.
To come home because I wasn't as I didn't have a Randy with no. It was just it's an interesting thing. So in aviation, you can't let your guard down. If you're gonna be professional, you have to be professional all the time. That's what I
Yeah, that's a great one. Randy, what comes to mind for you? I mean, 27,000 hours. You got a lot of options to choose from.
I've got a couple of them, but I think the most harrowing moment for me was I raced in different classes, 3 different classes at the Reno Air Races. And I had a very fast Formula One airplane that I was racing and passing a lot of the field. And as I came up on the very last airplane and was in a 90-degree bank behind him, I got in his wake turbulence and it rolled me inverted very close to the ground. And the natural instinct for an aviation startle factor is always, I've sort of coined it in the upset training that we do here with the Patriots, is the pilot's fetal position. We just have a tendency when that amygdala hijack pops that you have a tendency to pull. Fortunately, I had done enough aerobatics in my life and was flying air shows at the same time I was air racing. And I had enough sense to push to the inside of the track and get right side up again. But that shook me up pretty bad. My parents were there. My family was there. And they were all in tears and just wanted me to never race again. I did race after that, but it got my attention, and it just shows how fragile life can be. You know, it can just happen in a moment's time. And as Kevin says, you can never let your guard down. That I miscalculated where his wake was in the pass, and I got in it. So I was I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the things I took out of aviation, even when I was at the agency, was seeing people that were more senior than me, more experienced, and just a little hiccup somewhere and they die because of it. It just is such the humility you have to have in aviation, the safety that you've talked about. And I think I understand it when you talk about aviation safety, but people who have never been around aviation don't understand how ingrained that is, I think, in the fabric of what we do. Yeah. How about for you, Intake? I know I've heard the story of you coming down with the blues and just pulling out, I think, under 30 feet.
Right.
Maybe that's one. Is there another one that comes to mind for you?
That's probably the most significant for sure. So January 16th, 2001, and I don't remember if we talked about it during Combat Story, but to Kevin and Randy's point, right, you can't let your guard down and you have to be trained. And that training piece is significant because you have to maintain your cognitive capabilities when there is a non-normal or an emergency or an unknown, and control your breathing, your vision, all of those things. So that particular event, our minimum altitude was 2,000 feet. We were demonstrating a maneuver for the first time. We're diving towards the earth. It's going to be a solo cross maneuver. And there was just a series of causal events in the chain that were leading towards this potential incident or accident. And fortunately, we got the call out. And I remember our minimum altitude, we wanted to bottom at 2,000. Something wasn't right. The timing in my internal clock was that we had been pointed at the ground too long. And I remember looking in the heads-up display, and I saw 1,100 feet, and I had three immediate thoughts. Eject, you can't pull in a millisecond, because I knew if I would have ejected, I would have just gone into the hole. So I just pulled and bottomed out. The radar altimeter of the F-18 triggers every 3/4 of a second. And its minimum altitude was 27 feet. So we were 1,973 feet below the absolute minimum for that maneuver. But to Randy's point, when he said, I flew again, you have your emotional moment, you debrief it, you learn from it, you change the way you brief maybe to consider contingencies, and I was back flying the next day.
God.
To Intake's point, it's about the training. It all comes down to training. And we prepare for these contingencies with the Patriots, and that transferred over to the movie shooting as well. So on each one of our briefs prior to a practice or a demo in the air show with the 6 jets, our safety officer comes up with a scenario. And over the last 21 years, you can imagine how many practices and air shows we've flown. So we have played so many scenarios over. Let me give you an example. So lead pulls the 6-ship Delta over the top in a loop. And right in the top of the loop, as the nose is coming through the horizon, we get a call from ground that says, abort loop. That's from the ground. We have no idea why. Abort loop. As soon as we hear that, lead calmly says, aborting loop, easing forward, go spread. As soon as number 4 in slot sees that everybody's clear, he says, 4 is clear. And then lead says, roll ready now. And everybody rolls from inverted to right side up. Now he's got his left wingman on the right, his right wingman on the left. Now we've got to clean that up. So we go through in real time and get everybody moved over. So now he's going to move his left wingman, which are on the right side. He's going to push them out. He's going to get the right wingman, which are on the left. He's going to move them over. Then he's going to move the other guys over to the left side. So when that happens, which it has, we've already done this in our minds. We know exactly how it's going to go. Another scenario, somebody has hydraulic failure. Number 4 has hydraulic failure. We know exactly how it's going to go. Exactly. So now of 21 years of doing all these scenarios, whenever anything goes wrong, and it does, and it will continue to go wrong, you will have mechanical issues, you will have traffic, you will have birds that change your plan, we're ready and set. We transferred that to the filming industry as well. And we had scenarios. What ifs? What if this happens? What if that happens? We talk about it, and by the end of the movie, we were prepared for just about anything that could happen, and it was going to go smoothly. So, to Intake's point, training is everything. If the training is proper and you've got those proper inputs when it does occur, you have a much better chance of survival.
Last two questions for everyone here. Intake, we covered this in the show for one of them, but is there anything for Kevin and Randy that you carried with you or you continue to carry with you when you fly? It's like a good luck charm, something that somebody gave you that you just want to have on you in the cockpit, in the flight suit?
I don't. However,
Did you carry your SAG award?
He carries
it fits in the leg, right?
Yeah.
there's only room for one of those in the cockpit, and since you carry yours, I don't have room to carry mine. But one thing that we do have is a coin. In that coin, Patriots coin. So we do carry that, but it's not so much for good luck. It's just that at the bar, if somebody taps and you don't have your coin, you're going to be buying a lot of drinks.
I mean, it gets a little superstitious now. It feels weird if you don't have it.
It does. That's right.
So no, I'm not superstitious. So yeah, I don't carry anything with me.
How about you, Kevin? Anything?
I carry a challenge coin from VFC 13, who's the aggressor squadron at Fallon, Nevada, and it's because these guys got me into the whole coin thing. And
Yep.
Everybody coins each other, especially on Top Gun. Every squadron's got a coin. We had movie coins, Top Gun Maverick coins. And same thing with Randy. You keep it with you so you don't have to buy everybody beer when you don't have it. And then I just ended up keeping it in my flight suit. And then it just...
And last night at dinner,
I didn't have it.
Somebody else?
No, but
Hey,
this one coin, for some reason, it's over by the airplane right now. It's in my backpack. Goes with me on all the jobs.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right.
Ryan,
yeah, go ahead, Intake.
It occurs to me as we're having this discussion, we have spent a tremendous amount of time together, but and Randy had mentioned working with Kevin's dad 20 years ago. My brother Michael, who is a stuntman in Hollywood, has worked with Kevin's dad. So when I got hired, I said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm going to work with this guy, Kevin LaRosa." He goes, "Oh, I know his dad." And so anyhow, the aviation world, it's a really small world, and although we didn't come together until 2018-17, our lives have been enmeshed
That's
for
amazing.
decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the last thing that I just wanted to ask each of you, because you've flown so many aircraft, is there one in particular, like if you could go back in time and fly something or something today you wish, like, God, I'd love to just sit in the cockpit of that thing, take it for one spin? Does anything come to mind for any of y'all?
P-51 Mustang.
Yeah.
his dad used to own a Mustang.
Oh,
His dad sold it on him instead of giving it to him.
Yeah.
did you get to fly it or no?
Stingy.
Never forgiven for that.
Did you get to fly it?
I was
Too
I
young?
was 17 when he sold it. He owned it for 7 years. We flew it like it was a Cessna on the weekly. Every weekend we'd fly the Mustang. And when you're that young, unfortunately, you don't really understand the gravity of the aircraft you're riding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And nowadays I look back and I realize we used to fly a Mustang around like it was a station wagon. And we go get burgers in it and we go do shoreline runs. And I cannot believe we had a beautiful P-51D model. But anyway, it's my favorite airplane in the world. I want to own one day, but they'll be like $2 billion by the time I'm ready to buy one, the way they go up in value. That's the airplane.
All right. How about you, Randy?
You know, there's so many airplanes that I would love to fly and so many airplanes that I've had the opportunity to fly. It's hard to pick one. But I've got a Sukhoi 26, and that airplane will do whatever you ask it to do. And I love to just get out there and tear up the skies with it or fly formation with another buddy of mine that has one. Yeah, I love
That's
the
cool.
airplane.
How about you, Intake?
Ryan, you know what I think I want to do is fly in an L-39 during a Patriot Jet Team practice with you in the back
There you
tomorrow.
go.
How's that sound?
Man, tee it
Does
up.
that sound all right?
I mean, I was hoping you were going to say an Apache, but I'll take that as a close number 2 right there. That's awesome.
You get to fly the loop.
All right. All right. Gents, anything else that we should touch on before we wrap? Obviously, we're going to show a lot of footage of this place because I don't know how you put it together, Randy, but this is an amazing piece of history, I think, as well. But just, you can't walk in here having touched aviation at some point in your life and not just love the smell of this hangar.
Yeah.
We built this hangar 12 years ago. We were in smaller hangars at the other end of the airport, and it has been not only a great place for me, but a great place for the community
Yeah.
and the kids.
And the kids, yeah.
And then all of us, of course, on the team. And if anybody's interested in putting vinyl on these jets, call me.
Yep. For sponsorship slots here.
Open for sponsorship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, this must have been like what a naval hangar was like at some point, because this is not what the Army ones were like intake.
Right.
I don't know. All right, well, thanks, gents. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, this is a
Been a pleasure.
blast.
I hope you enjoyed this combat story. Next week, we have a special edition of Combat Story where I go flying with Intake and Randy in the back seat of an L-39 in formation with the Patriots Jet Team and do my best to not pass out or throw up so as to not embarrass my Army aviation brethren. Stay safe, y'all.
All right,
Nice work.
guys.
Nice work.